Bob Katter is one of the independent MPs in our parliament. He never leaves...
KP, not independent.
Sorry, right, OK. We will come to you in a second, Bob, but we wanted to play a clip of what you were saying yesterday, getting pretty fired up at a press conference.
Would you vote against that proposal?
What proposal? No, I'm not. Don't lead me into your rubbish, right? Don't you keep taking us on flights of fancy. No, your city, lily pad lefty mindset, right? So I'm not going to answer your questions because they insult us as a race of people.
Well, why also saying you said you were opposed to the voice? So if that proposal came to Parliament to vote on it...
I'm not listening to you. I'm not listening to you because we've listened to the likes of you, and that's because... You are asking a most pejorative question, and it is absolutely represents the problems that we've got.
As you heard, Bob Katter from the Katter Australia Party is here in the studio with us. Bob, you seem to go from 0 to 100 there, being asked a question about the Indigenous Voice to Parliament, talking to Greg Brown from the Australian. What happened?
I think the day that I lose my passion is the day I'll hang up my shoes and walk away. I go to funeral after funeral. I got off the aeroplane last week and there's a little skinny black kid. He wouldn't have been 13 years of age, let's say he was 12. And he's manacled to a big policeman. There's another policeman on the other side. I'd say 1 in 25 times I get in a plane. I'd say 1 every 3 weeks, one of my rugby league mates or one of my mates from my mustering days or mining days is dying out there, first Australians. And I mean, when I hear an infantile question like that, that takes the focus off the fact that my first Australian cousin brothers are not allowed to own a house. They are not allowed to drink. They are not allowed to take a branch off a tree on their own land.
What do you mean not allowed to own a house?
There's no process by which you can get a title deed. One of the reasons that I have this fame...
Sorry, but Indigenous Australians can buy houses, Bob.
Not in that 20% of Australia that is supposedly owned by we first Australians. On that 20% of the surface area of Australia, which is called the community areas, there is no process by which we, Malbrough, tried desperately to introduce it federally. Now, apart from that effort, there's been no effort even made to allow us to own our own house. And if you read Hernando de Soto's book, which should have got the Nobel Prize, as to why Peru and Egypt and Philippines are the poorest nations on earth because they can't get a title deed. These people can't get a title deed. It's not hard. When I was minister, the boys wanted it. You know, my blackfellow mates that run the show, they said, we're giving out title deeds. Well, they issued 800 in 3 years. I doubt whether there's been 100 issued in Queensland in the last 30 years. I would very much doubt that there's been 130 years. And we issued 800 in the space of 3 years. So it's not hard to do, but I mean, we can't even own our own house.
But that doesn't actually stop an Indigenous person buying a house.
Sorry?
That doesn't stop an Indigenous person buying a house.
Oh, if he wants to leave his home, town. I mean, one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life was leave my hometown of Cloncurry. I don't want to leave these areas when we don't want them to leave. That's their home. They've lived there for countless generations. Why should they be forced to go and live in Cairns to buy a house? Why are they not allowed to buy a house on what's supposed to be their own land? Why? Is there some reason for this? But instead of coming to grips with the real issues, I get this little pygmy asking me the most ridiculous infantile questions.
Well, what was the question? You call him a little
that's
pygmy.
what happens here.
That's
all
pejorative, Bob Katter. He was asking about the voice to Parliament. What was pejorative about the question specifically?
We have had 3 times, I think, National Aboriginal Consultative Council. There have been 3 groups, right? Now, you know, the voice in Canberra, I'm a voice in Canberra. Does anyone listen to me on this issue? No.
But can you just tell me
25 years. Do you think...
Sorry, can you just tell me what was pejorative about his question?
No, you're going down exactly the same path.
No, I'm not, Bob.
No. Let's start talking about if we are an identifiable race of people, Tom, if we, blackfellas, are an identifiable race of people, we have the highest incarceration rates in the world. We have the lowest life expectancy. of any race of people on earth. We have the highest stolen children of any race of people on earth. And you drag me down. You drag me down. I'm not being personal here, but because I know that's not your intention. But you drag us down to have a fight over whether we should be in the Constitution, while we're out there dying for the basic rights that every other person on earth has. And I'm trying to bring the attention back. Now, we're not mucking around anymore. You know, I held that conference yesterday to serve notice that there is a group of distinguished Australians, people that will, every one of them will impress you. You'll know their names, distinguished Australians, that are coming forward as a body to get change.
But you need to work with
there will be an action council. No, forget about Parliament.
But
the only language they understand is this.
You're going to need to work with your
That's the only language they understand is this, right? I have tried to work with Parliament, and as you're well aware, I've had enormous power. At various times in the parliaments, I have had enormous power. I had a very close relationship with John Howard, and I worked very hard for John in a whole range of areas. I had a very close relationship with Kevin Rudd, and I worked very hard for Kevin in a number of areas. Now, I've had great power. What have I been able to achieve for these people? Nothing. So far as I'm concerned now, the gloves are off. The only language these people understand is the use of raw, brutal power.
All right, well,
and I wanted my rage and my intentions to show yesterday. If you won't run me on the fact that a group of distinguished Australians come forward and we get an action council that are out for blood, literally, then I will show you the rage that is out there. Better you see that rage now before Australia becomes the South Africa of the 21st century. Because if these figures become public worldwide, then you can look forward to trade sanctions, to sporting teams being banned, for people being spat on. Well, Tom, the figures are there. You
what
answer
figures
me.
are you saying are not public, that if they were made public would become the South Africa?
I'm not going into that much detail.
But why not?
I am going to. No, because that will go into the world press, right? Now, I'm not giving the full picture, but I'll just give you a brief glimpse. I'm just quoting. And if you think that I'm unreasonable in my rage yesterday, we sat in that parliament and apologised, all voted for an apology for the stolen children generation. When we were voting, we were taking the children at almost twice the rate, per capita rate, that we were taking them then. Now, I am entitled to my rage in the face of that hypocrisy.
You're saying there was another stolen generation going on during the apology. What do you mean?
I think the Sydney Morning Herald, but one of the major Australian newspapers had it on the front page. They released the figures for New South Wales, and they were stealing the children at a greater rate now than they were then. But anyone like myself, close to the action, knows that that's the case. Well, we know that that's the case. I mean,
there wasn't an en masse forced policy of simply taking children away from their families. That's what the stolen generation was. That wasn't in existence at the time of the apology.
Tom, you're well aware I'm a published historian, I'm a student of history, and I was brought up with First Australians that had connections to the tribal era, right? You know that, right? So when I answer your question, right, they were taken from the children in the days of what we call the stolen generation because the parents were not looking after them properly. That is exactly the same reason why they're being taken now. The parents are not looking after them properly. Well, by your white fella civilised standards, that may be true. But, you know, the fact of the matter is that reflects upon the rest of we Australians, that we have created a society in which these people are not able to bring up their children properly.
Bob Catter, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Bob.